You guys, one of my favorite people in the world is on the podcast this week, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear her story. My name is Kay. Welcome to Project Freelance. If you guys want to know more about me, you can figure it out. It's all down in the description. I feel like I don't need to tell you guys any of this stuff, but yeah, if you guys want to know stuff about me, down in the description. This podcast is for creators like you. If you want to create your career out of your dream, this is the podcast for you. I wanted to make it because I've made a bunch of mistakes, to be completely honest with you, on my path to where I am now as a filmmaker, a photographer, a musician. And I want to share my stories with you because I don't want you to make the same mistakes. I want you to make new mistakes so that you can teach people and on and so on and so on and so on. So this week on the podcast, I have Lindsey Lerner. I met Lindsey last summer. Here's the thing. She does a lot of things. Lindsey has a company called Level Exchange. I'll put all the links below. She'll talk about it in this episode. But we talk about so many different things in this podcast, from TMing to doing so many different things, to being a female in this industry, navigating it, being a part of the LGBT community in this world, in this society, in this industry. So I met Lindsey last summer because, to be honest, I am a massive fan of an artist named George Watsky. If you don't know who Watsky is, I'm going to put some links down below. I started, way back in the day, I was, trying to write music and stuff. And on YouTube, there wasn't a whole lot of inspiration when it came to writing style. And spoken word was something that I had really gotten into. And I found this guy on Def Jam, slam poetry, or I don't even know what it was. But he was on there, and I heard one of his spoken word pieces, and I was like, oh my God, this guy has so many things to say. Like, I love what he's saying. Like, this is absolutely fantastic. And he's so articulate and intelligent. He has just the things that go through this guy's brain just baffle me. I was on Warped Tour last summer and Watsky was playing, and I really wanted to meet Watsky, and I just wanted to talk his brain off because the things that he talks about in his music, it's just so fascinating. So Lindsey was working for Watsky, and she was a lady on Warped Tour. I'm a lady on Warped Tour. We hit it off immediately. She's absolutely fantastic. She introduced me to everybody. I got to know Watsky. I got to know his crew, his friends, the people on his bus. He was with Futuristic. I got to meet him and know him a little bit. It was absolutely an incredible, incredible summer. And if Lindsey hadn't been there, I probably would have lost my brain. But yes, if you guys enjoy this podcast, please let me know down below. Give it a rating. All right, Lindsey, let's do this. Tell the people who you are.
Hey everyone, my name is Lindsey Lerner, and I am the founder of a company called Level Exchange, a music content and artist development platform based in Providence, Rhode Island. In addition to that, I am fortunate enough to work with a hip-hop spoken word artist named George Watsky, and I've been doing a bit of his creative production side of things, as well as doing a bit of his tour managing.
So Lindsey and I met last summer on Warped Tour, and initially you were out doing one thing, but you ended up having to do a lot of things. So tell me why. Tell me why that happens, and tell me what you had to take on.
We did meet on Warped Tour. I think I'm still tired from Warped Tour, but that's okay. Just massive amounts of coffee every day. But anyway. Yeah, I've been working with Watsky doing some consulting for about the past year and a half, 2 years or so. And originally the conversation about Warped Tour came up because for George's 2016 tour, I had found the tour bus that they used and had gotten them a good deal on it, super affordable. And he had reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, Lindsey, we need a tour bus for this summer. We're going on Warped Tour." And so I shot him an email back and I was like, "Oh, word, dude, no problem. I know last time you needed, I think it was 10 bunks, 12 bunks, whatever it was. How many do you need this time around? And we'll go from there." And he emailed me back and he said, hey, Lindsey, we need at least 10, but if there's a bus that can accommodate more people, then we'll find people to fill them. And I shot him an email back and I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll get looking. And if you need someone to fill those seats, like, I got you. To which I did not receive any reply whatsoever, and then was very, very, very embarrassed and felt super uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, that is definitely the line that we should not have crossed there. Awesome. And so so I kind of like pushed it out of my brain, and I was like, shit, all right, well, I'm gonna ignore that really, really awkward situation, keep going. And then we had kept working on other projects over the following weeks, and about 3 weeks later he hit me up and he was like, hey, Lindsey, we had found a bus that I think it had, I don't know, at least a dozen, if not 13, 14 bunks or something like that. I think it could actually have accommodated around 20 people if you really like fixed and situated it a certain way. And so he was like, we were thinking about bringing an extra person on board just as like an all-around utility person to help with everything. I know you mentioned in your last email that I ignored, but I know you mentioned that you might be interested. Were you serious about coming on tour? And before I could even think about the answer, my fingers typed yes and hit send. And then immediately got a response back with, okay, cool, I'll send you the details. And then I just kind of sat there and I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're at right now. This is happening. And I was like totally ignoring the fact that I have like, you know, a business to run in Rhode Island, and I have a dog and a life, but it was fun. And so ended up on tour as just like that all around. I was like a friggin' like Swiss Army knife. It was like, if there's a problem, Lindsey will figure it out, whatever, no big deal. We were doing everything from like social media management to content production. We had a sponsorship with Skull Candy this summer that was amazing, and they're an incredible company to work with, and working directly with our videographer and our photographer to create the content that we needed for them to fulfill our obligations. And then over the course of tour, everything played out a little bit differently.
Definitely. So explain to people that don't really, live that tour life, that don't really have that experience, why do bands and artists hire somebody like that, like a utility person? Like, what is the reasoning behind that? And I mean, I know the answer, but like, explain to the people. I think it's good to have somebody who's really down for anything on the road with you. I actually had never been on tour before in my entire life. I had never even been to Warped Tour. I grew up in Rhode Island, and my parents were pretty strict when I was growing up, and I was never allowed to go to Warped Tour. And then when I got there, I realized why. Mostly meeting people like Kay. No, I'm kidding. Okay, true.
But I got there and I was like, oh my word, like what the hell am I doing here? I had never been so uncomfortable, I think, in my entire life as I was for the 52 days that we were on tour this summer. But because of that, I was able to learn 10 times more than I have in any other situation. But I think that being quick on your feet and being good under pressure are not things that everyone is good at, especially, for artists, like they have to get up every single day and pour their hearts out and perform, and they need someone who can be there to be that support system and be that consistency and remain constant and level-headed throughout the tour, which is why I think it's so important to bring someone on like that who's okay with being the problem solver and being able to put out fires.
Yeah, and I think definitely a lot of your purpose and a lot that comes with your position is, like you said, it's working with the artist to be their support system, and the mental health aspect of being on the road.
people overlook it a lot of times, and because it was your first tour, like your mental health and helping your artist, you know what I mean, and your crew.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that, like you said and touched on earlier, mental health is definitely something that people overlook. And I personally, I have always been an athlete. I was on the swim team in high school. I was on the rowing team in college. I was a personal trainer during college to pay for school. And because of that, I've always had a good relationship with whether it's working out or physical activity in correlation to mental health. If I don't work out or I don't go for a walk or whatever it is, then I'm super, super agitated and on edge, and I'm not necessarily a great person to be around, as you experienced the day or two on this tour this summer. But that being said, it was definitely a weird dichotomy to be so pretty, I guess, hyper obsessed with fitness and working out, being on a primarily punk rock tour. I distinctly remember there's one video that's hella funny of me and our drummer Chakudi in the back of our bus deadlifting, and in the background all of the girls, or maybe not all of them, a few of the girls that were in barbed wire dolls were in the background just smoking cigarettes and drinking, watching us. And I was like, this is Warped Tour. This is fantastic. And
literally the epitome of, like, if you could like take a snapshot of Warped Tour, I think that would be it. And I'm so sad I wasn't there to take a picture.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of people, I get up every single day at 4:45 and I go to the gym, and a lot of people think that I'm crazy for it. And I mean, they're a little bit correct, but it's also because of the mental health aspects. Like, I feel as though I need to do that in the morning to get myself to like an appropriate energy level that's fit for the consumption of other people. And Warped Tour definitely that it was necessary. It was necessary during tour. I mean, you're dealing with, how many people were on tour with us? 700, 800 people?
Something like
every
that,
single
like
day.
1,000.
Yeah, every single day. There's at least 500 to 1,000 people that are traveling across the country with you. There's 41 shows, 52 days. We traveled over, I think it was 20,000 miles across the United States to pull this off. And it gets to you after a while. And then on top of it, it's hot, it's disgusting. I think we'll leave it at that.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's Warped Tour.
But I mean, yeah, it's not as glamorous as one would hope. But it's amazing at the same time. So
talk about hard, man. Like, and working out on Warped Tour is another, like, that's like next level, because I mean, you're walking everywhere all the time. Like, you don't need to like lift and like do all that stuff, but we do it because we have to. And I mean,
absolutely.
Like Lindsey and I worked out together like a couple times. But I mean, like, it was unreal and nuts, and I don't know how we did it and why we did it, but somehow we survived.
Hashtag Warped Tour workout.
Hashtag Warped Tour workout. Tell me about being a lady. Tell me about being a lady in the industry, and tell me about, if you want to talk about the LGBT aspect of it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, I live and work 80% of the time in Providence, Rhode Island. And in Providence, Rhode Island, we don't have a music industry. My goal is that in 5 to 10 years from now, we do have a music industry in Rhode Island. That's the vision that gets me out of bed in the morning. But because of the fact that we don't currently have very much of a music industry, I didn't realize the huge discrepancy in the male to female ratio. And I had heard of organizations like Women in Music or other nonprofits that are fighting for more equal rights in terms of men and women across all industries, not necessarily just music. And it wasn't until this summer in June that I went to a conference in France called MIDEM. And I was sitting there, and there was, a group of women that had come up to me, and they were like, hey, like, do you want to come to our event? And I was like, yeah, sure, like, what is it? And they were like, oh, it's this thing, it's a nonprofit organization, it was started in the 80s, it's called Women in Music. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay, well, like, or you could just get over yourself, and it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, just like, get your shit together and do what you have to do to make it work, was my pretty aggressive attitude towards it. And then once that was kind of brought to my attention, I realized the rest of that day when I was sitting through all of these lectures and workshops and interacting with people that 90% of the people who were there were men. And I was like, oh, okay. This is actually an issue, because in Providence, it's basically just me. And then I don't really notice much other than that. And then I go here and I'm like, okay, these are music industry people from all over the world, whether it was LA, New York, London, France, wherever. And 90% of them are male. And so since then, I've become a member of Women in Music. I've attended a bunch of their events, whether it's in Boston or New York or LA. They have chapters all over the country. And it really is about just bringing the awareness to the fact that women do get constantly overlooked for opportunities, and being able to have women at the table and include women in those conversations and make a conscious effort to do so. Fortunately, most of the people that I deal with, that isn't an issue, especially dealing with somebody like Watsky, who is very involved and aware of life and all of the issues that are currently transpiring. So he's incredible to work with. But there have been other circumstances where we haven't been so fortunate, and people are ignorant, and they do make a conscious effort to make things difficult just because the male-female dynamic, which obviously isn't necessary. My attitude, whether it's the appropriate response or not, is to consciously be a little bit ignorant to it and ignore it and continue moving forward, regardless of whether or not what people think a man or a woman should be doing, because I don't care. which I know isn't the best approach, but
it's the best.
It's worked for me so far. And rather than if I ever miss out on an opportunity, whether it's for a job or a gig, or my grant proposal gets denied, whatever it is, I obviously, sometimes, if we're being blunt, it might be because I'm a woman. Maybe if I put Lee Lerner and put my dad's name on the grant application, maybe we would have gotten it. But instead I choose, okay, I could have done something better. I made a mistake. Let's figure out, regroup, and do better next time. I got very fortunate, I guess. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but the whole reason I even started working with Watsky was because my junior year of college, I started working with a hip-hop artist who was from Cincinnati, and he and I decided that somehow I was going to be his manager. And obviously I went to school for anthropology. If this were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would have thought that I would be in the middle of Africa doing field work right now. So things change, but all of that to say, I was under this very crazy impression that I could be this kid's manager, and because of that, I started reaching out to managers of artists that I really, really liked and respected and was a fan of, and Watsky happened to be one of those artists. And I made the very, very, very wrong assumption that since Watsky was this young, cool dude, he was this YouTube star, he's crushing it online, that because of that, his manager was probably some young, cool dude and was probably his college roommate or something like that. So I did a little bit of internet stalking and found this guy's email, and I shot him an email. And prior to getting my degree in anthropology, I actually went to school for photography, and that was my initial area of expertise, and it was always my foot in the door. And so I emailed this guy and I was like, hey, listen, I saw Watsky's playing this show at House of Blues, Boston. I would love to be able to photograph the show. And of course, like an idiot artist back in the day, I'm like, oh, I'll do it for free. It'll be amazing. Please, please, please. And I gave him like a link to my portfolio, the whole thing. And obviously didn't get a response. And then from there, I resent the email and didn't get a response. And then I sent it again and didn't get a response. And I may have sent it again and didn't get a response. And I'm not going to admit how many times I sent that email. But eventually one day I got a phone call and I said, hello. He goes, is this Lindsey? I go, huh? He goes, this is Kevin Morrow. This is Watsky's manager. And I was like, hi. And he goes, straight up, no hesitation, what the fuck do you want? And I said, what? Like, no idea. What? Who am I? Why am I? What? Could not form sentences. It was thoroughly embarrassing. And following my absolute embarrassment, this guy stayed on the phone with me for, I don't know, an hour, explaining that he was not some young dude that was Watsky's college roommate. He's in his 60s. He was one of the original gentlemen that was head of touring for House of Blues. He was vice president of Live Nation, and now he works with George and has his own record company, entertainment company out in Los Angeles. And I said, oops. And I said, oh, well, I guess I annoyed the right person. And he said, good thing I think it's persistence and not annoyance. And I said, okay, that's a nice way to say it. And from that was 4 or 5 years ago now. And the House of Blues show eventually came around, and I got there at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, despite the fact that the show wasn't until like, I don't know, 8 or 9. And I brought all of my camera gear, and I was like, I am taking pictures at this damn show if it kills me. And I had texted the number that he had called me from, and I was like, hey, really, really bummed that like you're out in LA, because it would have been really cool to meet up at this show today. And of course he didn't text me back. And I was like, okay, well, this is going well. So like a couple of hours go by and I'm like, all right, well, yep, we're still here, and still haven't figured out a way to sneak into House of Blues because security is ridiculously tight here. And the one guy that I know is still not answering me. So fine, I'll go put my camera gear in the car and like I'll just go in general admission like everyone else. And as I was gonna go walk back to the car, one of the side doors was open just a little bit, and I heard music. And so I peered in, had a fangirl moment, like a 12-year-old at a One Direction concert, because Watsky was on stage doing sound check. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in there. And so I went to go and open the door, and this humongous man approaches me, and he looks at me and he goes, sup, with the whole head nod. And I was like, sup, with the head nod. And he goes, you coming in? I was like, yeah. And for some reason, he moved out of the way and he let me in, and I had my camera gear, and I don't know whether it was the leather jacket or what, but he let me in. And then I just stood there and I was like, well, shit. The only person I know that has anything to do with anything here is 3,000 miles away. And yeah, I'm a little screwed right now. And so I took my phone out of my pocket to like pretend that I knew what I was doing. And the guy had texted me back, and he was like, oh, word. Last minute, I decided to end up coming to the East Coast, so I figured, why the hell not go to the show? Let me know when you get here. I might introduce you to our photographer. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm at sound check. And so 5 minutes later, this like old man rolls up, and he's got like his hoodie and his snapback on and his like super fly sneakers, and he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, are you Lindsey? Go, huh? He goes, how the fuck did you get in here? And I said, I don't know, man. You better start locking doors or something. And then he looks at me and he like gives me like the up and down look, and he's like, well, I guess you're not gonna blow the place up, so let's go. And so he takes me backstage, and I'm like, okay, hands down, this is the best day ever. And so I'm freaking out. I'm getting stopped left and right because I have no credentials, like no press pass, no anything. And I'm just like avoiding security and like hiding in the bathroom most of the time. Got to meet everyone, like George, the photographer. This was when Anderson .Paak was opening for George in 2014. It was like amazing. And from that day, I was like, whoa, like I need to be involved like in the music industry. This is so cool. It's so amazing to be able to watch how one person's art and one person's work, one person's music can unite the 2,500 people that are here rocking out at this concert right now. Like the high of that, obviously, you know, we experienced it 41 times this summer. It's so cool. And so then after that, about a year later, I had gone out to Los Angeles just for a vacation to visit one of my best friends who had moved out there. This was senior year of college. And I had found the address of Steel Wool Entertainment, of their office, somewhere online, and showed up at the office. And again, Kevin was like, how'd you get in here? And I was like, I don't know, bro, you really got to start locking these doors. And then he just kind of looked at me. We had another amazing conversation. And then he explained, he was like, well, why don't you just move to LA and like you can be my assistant? And I was like, yeah, I am already like God knows how much money in debt from college. I can't just drop out, this is senior year, and move to LA and be your assistant. Like, I can't. And so then nothing ended up happening from there. And over the year after that, like I had hit him up a few times and just like gave him little bits and pieces of information about Providence and what was going on in the music scene here, and artists that I had liked or wanted his opinion on, and it was cool to be able to have that relationship. And then about a year and a half, 2 years ago, he called me and he was like, Lerner. I'm like, oh boy, like, am I in trouble? Like, what's going on? He's like, I've got a gig for you. I'm like, okay, done, whatever it is, like, let's figure it out. And he's like, George needs help. And at this point, like, I'm like, George, you mean like George Watsky? Are you for real? And he's like, yeah, I'll connect you guys in an email. Bye. He like hangs up on me. And that was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So things change.
There's so many topics that I want to talk about now. Like, okay, first of all, persistence is a huge thing when it comes to, you know, growing, especially as a freelancer. Like, that's something you have to do. And people do think that they're pestering people, and they're like, and you know, sometimes you are, but sometimes it's necessary. And I mean, my favorite example, because I'm obsessed with him, Elon Musk, his secretary did the same thing. She emailed him and went to his office every single day for like a year. And then finally he was like, what the fuck do you want? Like, what do you want? And now she's been like his right-hand man or woman, whatever, forever. It's crazy.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's what it is. I think it's persistence, and I think it's a big part of being resilient and having the resiliency to be okay with getting told no all the time or not getting answered. And I mean, I would say at least half of the time, if not more, it's not that people are intentionally ignoring you or going out of their way to be a jerk or to make you upset or to offend you. It's that they get probably 1,000 emails every day and yours got lost in the shuffle, and oh well, like, you're out of luck. And which is why you have to resend things 3 or 4 times, or 5 or 8, whatever it is, until people answer you. I had this one mentor my freshman year of college, when I was still doing a lot of photography work, and we were doing a project on a bunch of people that lived in Providence and nearby New England towns that were either like low income or homeless, and we had this whole presentation that we were working on, and we were walking up to dozens and dozens, if not, you know, a couple hundred people asking like, hey, like, can I take your photograph? And everyone was like, no, absolutely not, screw you. And at the end of one day, I was just like distraught. I'm like, we didn't get any work done today. I have 0 portraits. Like, this is ridiculous. What the hell are we gonna do? And just to paint a picture of this woman, she's this like 5'4", if that, very, very fiery black woman who is basically the equivalent of like Tyler Perry on steroids. Super, super feisty. And she looked at me straight in the eye and like grabbed my face and she goes, Lindsey? I'm like, oh shit, like I'm in trouble right now. She goes, Lindsey? I'm like, yeah, Sharon, what's up? She goes, do you know what NO stands for? And I was like, no. And she goes, NO stands for new opportunity. And I was like, well, damn. Let's go. Like, it's time to keep moving, keep on keeping on. So every time that, like, I mean, today alone has been a rough day filled with about the 87 no's that I've heard just for the past 6 hours that I've been working. But for me, now every time someone tells me now, I'm like, okay, on to the next one.
Amazing. No stands for new opportunity. Definitely going to be the title of this podcast. Absolutely. It's so true. It's so true. So I want to go back just a little bit to, you knowing Watsky from YouTube, because that is, my story as well. And talk about networking and being at the right place at the right time. Like, I watched Watsky for years, I had never seen him play up until Warped Tour last summer. And I only knew of him because of his slam poetry stuff on YouTube. That's how I found him. And I listened.
That's how I found him.
I listened to Rafael Casal, and then that led me to Watsky, and I was like, oh my God, this guy has so much to say, and he has so much to say about what's going on, like you said. And from there, I knew he was playing Warped Tour, and I saw him play Soundcheck, every day. And I was like, oh my God. This is amazing. Holy shit. It's so, oh my God. It was such a surreal moment the first time I watched him play. And I was like, oh my God, I'm photographing him. And this is incredible. And then I, finally got over my nerves, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go say hi. So obviously the first person you talk to is the tour manager or whoever's there that seems like they're important and know what they're doing. So, and naturally I was like, oh, okay, there's a chick. That means I already have an in because we both are females in the industry. So, and we have to we come together. That's just what we do. And so I started talking to Lindsey, and I met George and the band, and from there we just started hanging out and networking. And it's just that kind of, it takes that kind of, like you said, resilience, and finally be like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to fucking go for it. I'm going to try it.
Absolutely. I mean, my dad always used to tell me growing up, the worst someone can ever tell you is no. And that little bit of information combined with the fact that no stands for new opportunity is oh, awesome. All bases covered. Let's do it. Keep going. Because people I feel like people's gut reaction usually is pretty negative, and they do want to tell you no. Even if they like your idea, even if they haven't heard your idea, they're just like, nope, we're not going to do that because it requires more work or more energy, or you're asking something of them. Of course they're like, nah, I've already got enough going on. And so it takes a lot to be able to convince people to use their time for your benefit.
Yeah, and not only that, a lot of people initially, like you said, are negative about it and say no, because not only those things, but money is also a huge factor that comes into that, because especially in the music industry, there's money, but successful people don't like to spend their money. And especially when you're a touring artist, you don't want another crew person on, because that takes out of your pay as well. Right? Crazy. So I want to go back to the mental health thing real quick. I don't know if you want to talk about it or if you're able to talk about it, but I kind of wanted to talk about Chester Bennington's death while we were on Warped Tour, and how that affected George, because he was with him only days before that. So how did that affect him, and how did that affect the crew and the morale on the bus?
Yeah, definitely. I personally had never met Chester Bennington or had any involvement with the Linkin Park crew, whether it was Mike Shinoda or anything. But obviously, like many people that were on tour this summer, was and am a huge fan of Linkin Park and all of the work that they've done. But it was definitely, I think, and you can obviously add to this, but it was a rough day, because Linkin Park, I think, is such a big part of not only the music community in general, but part of that Warped Tour crew and that Warped Tour family vibe that is somehow created over the summer. But it was definitely, I specifically remember every single day of tour kind of just went one day and faded into the next. But I think that show in particular was definitely a particularly rough day. It was a rough moment, and I know that it definitely impacted impacted George. We changed, that was probably one of the only days that we changed the set list, and George had played a few of his more somber songs and dedicated them to Chester, and definitely took some time out of the set to make sure that everyone in the audience was okay with everything. And I think we had found out about Chester's passing like right before getting on stage, so it was definitely it was a rough day. But again, I didn't have a relationship with him, so I don't want to speak necessarily too much about that, but I can definitely speak to the impact that it had across the music community that day. It was definitely felt.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that was a big impact on Warped Tour for me as well. You know, like that day actually brought me so much closer to those people on that tour, because especially Warped Tour, like you said, those artists and those bands and those crew members on tour, a lot of the, you know, Warped Tour specific artists, they are hugely and highly influenced by Linkin Park and Chester Bennington. And I saw band members, like grown ass men, like crying on stage, crying backstage, oh my God, like I was a mess as well. That day was so hard. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was
unreal.
definitely one of the more rough days this summer. But I think that is just another example of why music is so important, and why there needs to be more of a value placed on music. I see it all the time, just in the music industry in particular, but also in the arts in general, that people don't understand the financial value of music, or they don't value it financially, which is super, super unfortunate. But when moments like that happen in a negative way, but also the positive things that came out of building that community and making it a more close-knit community, I think that it just needs to be, those are things that need to be discussed, because people don't necessarily, like you said, the mental health side of things, people don't necessarily focus on the people behind the work. I think nowadays it's a little bit more obvious, because everybody's on social media and everyone is sharing their stories, and everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people want you to know everything that's going on in their lives. But I think Chester was a good example. Not everyone knew the full story and knew what was going on, and it's important to discuss those things.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast about social media and the impact social media has on artists and you know, like the fans. Like it's the pressure nowadays is insane. Like you feel like you have so much more responsibility, and you do. I mean, like there's things like, I don't know if you've heard about the Logan Paul thing, but I mean, this YouTuber basically screwed up his entire career by posting a video of a man hanging in the suicide forest in Japan and like laughing about it. Yeah, bad, really bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's bad, and like that just shows you, like, social media, like people are so desensitized, and people are so will do literally anything to go viral, like essentially anything to go viral. And that, you know, artists do the same thing. And then like Watsky went viral. That's how he became, you know, that's how he, I don't want to say got his success, but that's how his career, I guess, launched, you know, and then he built his success off of that. So yeah, there are, like I said, like there are pros and cons to social media, and I think that's a super important thing. And yeah, mental health definitely needs to be talked about more in the industry. And I think, like you said, now there's more awareness because people are sharing their stories. And I mean, we could talk about the same thing with being a female in the industry. I mean, all these women in the film industry right now are doing everything to protest, you know, the sexual harassment, you know, accusations, and it's amazing. And I'm so glad that there's finally a chance for change and people are starting to stand up, because I think people are getting fed up with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. And it's good to see some positive outcomes from social media, because obviously, like we talked about, there are quite a few negative negative impacts that have come from it as well.
Yeah. So what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I'm laughing because I ask myself this question every day. Well, that's a good one. You may have stumped me. No.
That is the question that seems to make everyone stumble.
There's so many things that I wish I knew then that I now know, but also I'm corny as all hell when I say I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and I think I've learned everything when it needed to be learned. Also, I mean, it would have been nice to know that it was all going to be okay, and I think now I'm much more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that is something as a freelancer that is extremely important. You have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, because most of the time we're going to be uncomfortable, especially because, we do work for ourselves. So we literally have to market ourselves and pitch ourselves on a daily basis. And especially as, I hate to keep talking about it because I don't care, but being a female, we definitely have to do that even more. And, even me as like an LGBT person, like we have to overcome things like that. Like even most, like recently I've been getting so many emails and people are saying like, "Hey, Ken," like, because my name is like K Anagonio, so everyone assumes I'm a guy and my name is Ken.
Effort.
And I mean, because I'm androgynous, like, it's ridiculous, but
That's it. That's why. Yeah, my thing.
My name's Ken now.
Yes, perfect. I'm gonna start calling you that. I mean, it's a weird world out there, man. as we've talked about, but it definitely, freelancing and being, I don't necessarily, I guess I am a freelancer. I never really associated myself or thought of myself as a freelancer. I just know that I am a terrible employee, and I can't work for other people. I have worked for other people. I think that I can do anything, and if I ever really did need money or was, was going to be homeless or something, I would suck it up and I would get a job working for someone else. But I really am a terrible employee, and there a few times in the past several years I go back and forth every, maybe, I don't know, twice a year or so. I either have some sort of mental breakdown that includes visions of me saying screw everything, grabbing my hammock and moving back to Chile and just living on the beach. That's one. And then the other is, oh shit, okay, fine. I'm going to get a real job. I'm going to get the whole health insurance 401k stability thing. I'm going to go and interview for a bunch of jobs and see what happens. And I think it was last year and the year before. There's two organizations in Providence that I work with all the time that I'm pretty heavily involved in, and I believe in their mission and their vision, and they had job openings. And I went and I wrote the cover letter and did the resume and went through the whole application process, interviewed with everyone in the office, and both times I got separate phone calls or emails afterwards being like, hey, can we go grab a coffee, or hey, can we go grab a drink, from the CEOs or from the founders of those organizations. And they looked me dead in the eye and they were like, Lindsey, we think you're great. We know that you're definitely more than capable of accomplishing any tasks that we put out in front of you, but like, what the hell are you doing? You know that you can't do anything other than what you're doing right now. And if we were to hire you, you'd last all of maybe 6 months. So get the hell out of here. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, that's awkward, because like, I'm poor as hell right now, so now what? And then it comes back to the fact that I would rather work hundreds of hours every single week for myself than 40 hours a week for any amount of money for somebody else.
Exactly. And I talk about that all the time on this podcast. I mean, like, it seems so stupid to me. Like, why would I work for you? Like, why would I work for you? Like, why? Like, that's your dream. That's your name. Like, what? Like, that's so stupid. What a waste of my time. But hey, I'm a horrible employee as well. I've had one real job.
Yeah, I've had lots of real jobs, and I have like the attention span of a gnat when it comes to working on other people's projects, or I just get bored, or it's the same like monotonous thing all over and over again. And I don't know. I ended up graduating from a pretty traditional university that had a very, very heavy focus on business. So a lot of the students that I graduated with, or teammates that I graduated with, friends, are all at some of the top 4 accounting firms or financial institutions, and they've got the corner office and the 80, 90, 100K a year jobs right out of college. And man, I would rather live off of nothing than do that. In the beginning, I mean, last year, probably this year, I haven't heard back from my accountant yet, but last year in particular, I remember sending all of my spreadsheets and everything over to my accountant, and she emailed me back, and she was like, did you screw this up? And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, how did you live off of that little amount of money? And I said, well, I don't know, man. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't know.
You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. It's fine.
There's not
it out. It's gonna
be okay.
There's
not a value to me. There's not a value in money. If I have enough money to pay for my apartment, to get some groceries, and to pay off my student loan debt and feed my dog,
there it is.
Pretty content.
Feed the dog.
The dog.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, you got to feed the dog.
Yes. I mean, the dog eats better than I do.
Yeah.
Probably.
My cats too. Yeah. My cats get so many types of food. It's ridiculous. Actually might be getting another cat.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. Oh, lesbians.
Just what you need.
Like you said, you do a lot of work with like charity, and you've done a lot of work for charity and organizations like that. Where do you draw the line from, working for free and working, like saying like, okay, like I need to get paid for this. Like when you said, when you went to the House of Blues show, like you were like, oh shit, I should have gotten paid for that. Like, why did I do that for free? Even though that was like you snuck in, like literally, like that's what it takes. Like sometimes that's what it takes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I offered to shoot that show for free because I thought that it would open up the door to let me in. Obviously that didn't work. I didn't even take my camera out. I didn't take a picture. I was just so like starstruck and like.
Wait, are you serious?
Oh yeah, not at all.
You definitely overlooked that. Oh
yeah, I was so overwhelmed and so like freaked out of like, holy shit, I don't have words. I can't form sentences. Cool. But yeah, it was pretty foolish to think that someone would respect me for offering my service for free. And I see that happen over and over and over again in music, especially with the local musicians that I work with, and this idea of paying to play and playing for the magical world of exposure and all of the other things that local musicians do that I don't agree with. For me, I think there's an interesting line between the for-profit and nonprofit world that recently a lot of people are focusing more on social enterprise. And I think that if social enterprise and the social impact world and the music industry got together, that many of the music industry's problems would be solved. The idea behind social enterprise is this whole notion of do well, do good, that you can do well financially, but also do good for your community. And that's something obviously that I 110% believe in. And that's why I created Level Exchange, because I envision this world where music and performing artists are paid fair wages for the service that they're providing to people, and that we can level the playing field between those music and performing artists and their consumers, whether it's online or it's in real life or at a concert, whatever it is. And the for-profit, nonprofit space is something that comes up all the time, and it's something that I get into arguments with people all the time about, and it really, really sucks, and is definitely something that's super difficult, because for me, art is a business and business is an art. And the most successful people, companies, organizations that have embraced that are really the ones that I think will be sustainable in the long run. Whether it's a company like Tesla, just to throw that in there for you.
Goddamn.
Or
Elon Musk, sponsor my podcast, please.
Exactly.
For the love of everything good in this world. Sir,
Right.
I will
Exactly.
photograph everything for you. Everything.
So whether it's a company, like Tesla, or it's the Apples of the world, companies like that do believe in the benefit of art and design and place as much of a value on that as they do the financial aspect and what their bottom line is.
It's so good to see these nonprofits, popping up in the music world. There's so many that I don't even know how many there are. You've got like Keep Abreast, you've got Music Saves Lives, Sweet Relief Musicians Fund. There's so many that are on Warped Tour, even like not only for those musicians and not only to help those musicians, but also for the fans. And I think that it's become such a huge part of Warped Tour. And the fact that there are, people like yourself on tour that are a support system, and we even had like an actual like somebody there for counseling purposes on Warped Tour, like all the security, like everybody was there, and such a huge support system. And I definitely needed that from you as well, and got it and more, like getting to, meet you and work with you and hang out with you on Warped Tour, like absolutely amazing. And like, thank you for that experience, and thank you for being on this podcast. I definitely appreciate you. So if people want to find you or Level Exchange or you on social media, where can they find you?
Sure. My social media is definitely way better than Level Exchange's at the moment, because we've gone a bit underground until this summer when we're launching our new projects. But you can find me at Lindsey, Lindsey _Lerner, Lerner on Instagram is definitely the best course of action.
Yes, and if you also want to get hella motivation to go work out, oh my god, this bitch, like the other day, like just like, oh, deadlifting, no big deal. Like, oh yeah, deadlifting in the back of the tour bus, no big deal. So if you want a whole hell of a lot of lady inspiration, go follow Lindsey, go check her out, and go support what she's doing, because she's building something great, and I think that it's going to impact not only the music industry, but just business in general, freelancing business, everything. So if you guys enjoyed this podcast, please let me know down below by giving it a rating, leaving a comment, whatever you guys want to do. But I hope you got something out of this podcast. I really do. If you are wanting to get in the touring world, if you're a lady in the industry, if you are in the LGBT community, I really hope you got something out of this podcast, and that it helps further your career, and it helps, further your life. If you guys dug it, like I said, let me know. If you want to find me, you can at kanagoniaphotography.com or at kanagoniaphotography on Instagram, Facebook. And if you want to know more about Lindsey and what she's going to be up to, you can find her on Instagram at Lindsey_Lerner. And if you want to learn more about Level Exchange, you can go to lindseylerner.com. Like I said, all these links will be down below, along with some links to discounts to camera gear for you guys. And if you want to become a part of a community that I have built on a website called Guru Shots, I host photography contests. So if you'd like to be involved, check out that link below, guys. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think about the podcast. And hey, I hope you listen next week.